he had freedom in Cuba, Belgium, Brazil, Congo, UK and all over the USA to crowds from 14 to 40,000. International leadership speaker, trainer and coach. Author of Learn to Raw Leadership, Attitude Hack, Live a More Excellent Life, 5 Battle Strategies of a Victorious Warrior. 2021 President's Lifetime Achievement Award recipient. Founding partner of the John Maxwell team. Toastmaster International Speech Competition semi-finalist. Founder of Tell It Like It Is TV, ThatGuyRocks.com and ThatGuySpeaks.com. Creator of Story Power TV, Transforming Grace TV, and Leading Leaders Podcast. Producer of 4 TV programs and podcasts for Liftable TV and World Trumpet Television as well as multiple social media channels. Please help me welcome J Loren Norris.
I was listening to a book excerpt today being read by, well, I'll tell you who it was read by in a minute, but on page 40, apparently, of this book called The Country We Knew, I think was the name of it, or The Nation We Knew, something like that. The book was about a new president number 47, so we're not even there yet. We haven't reached it. But this president called on a particular individual to be a cabinet member responsible for rebuilding infrastructure. And the irony was, this book landed in the mail of the guy who was reading it, and it turns out the book is a future projection, and he's the cabinet member that they're recruiting. Now, that seems a little bizarre if you were to think about a book showing up in the mail and then your name is mentioned in the book, and you're the one being asked to take on this role to preserve the future in a future that hasn't yet happened. But there's a reason that individual was the one who was being targeted, even in the fictional aspect of the book, to be the one who would answer the question, what should infrastructure look like? And knowing how to pick just that right person for that role, that really is the work of the leader. If we as leaders have not taken the time to figure out who the strongest players on the team are and what it is that they're best at, then we're not going to be able to put them in the right place. But if we haven't bothered to ask the question, what does that role need to do, then we'll never find the right people to put in that place. You might see this episode as a continuation of the last one, Leaders Know What They Don't Know and What to Do Next. I want to talk about putting the right tools in your cabinet on this episode of Leading Leaders. Subscribe now for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast, and I want you to know that there are a whole lot of people that will apply for a job having faked their resume. Well, they know what it takes to get the job. They know what the right job should look like. They know what the right roles, responsibilities, previous accomplishments, pedigrees, certifications, degree programs. They know what all those should look like. They can build a little frame of what the job should be, and they would love to come in and take the job. So they will build out a fake resume, fake credentials. Or they might even go one step further and get somebody to vouch for them that they have all these credentials when they really don't. There was a famous phrase that maybe you've heard it. I heard it a lot when I was growing up. I heard people say, and they would say in jest, but it's really a scary fact that most people do it. You lie to it and I'll swear to it. You lie about it and I'll swear to it. Whatever you make up, I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to endorse it, even if I know that it's false. And I think the scary part of employers and employees relationship is that sometimes one lies about it and the other one swears to it. One is willing to fake the resume and the other one's willing to go, yeah, I'm all in. And maybe that's nepotism. Maybe it's old friend relationships. Maybe it's, payback for something in the past that they did for you a favor and now you owe them a favor. That's unfortunately how a lot of global politics is done. But see, in this fictional story, the guy who's being asked to help rebuild infrastructure as the world has shifted and changed. Again, this is future president, so it hasn't happened. It's not reality. It's a fiction, but it makes a great story. The guy who's being asked is Mike Rowe. Well, remember Mike Rowe's the guy who did several years of a show called Dirty Jobs with Mike Rowe, actually looking at the work of blue-collar workers and some of the jobs that nobody in the world wants to have. Some of those jobs that they're disgusting jobs, they're dirty jobs, they're nasty jobs. Nobody wants to have them, but those people are making $80,000, $90,000 a year. Some of them own their own business, some of them are employees. But see, being face to face with, down in the dirt with, next to them, in the mud, in the grit, in the yuck, in the nastiness of the job, gave Mike Rowe a perspective about work that most people don't have. Most people, leaders included, will do 1 or 2 levels of a job. They work their way up. They get their degree program, so they start at the top if they can. And they know from a book's sense what the job is about. But they haven't really done the job. They haven't really been in the midst of the job. If you've ever watched episodes of Undercover Boss, one of the most comical things, besides the fake drama that they create about incompetence, etc., is when they're asked to do a portion of a job and they really have no idea what the job was like. I remember taking a job right out of the Air Force, and I thought, I'm I'm all that in a bag of chips. I'm straight out of the military. I was a junior NCO in the military. I ought to be a manager like right away. And I was hired at a job as a manager in training. That's actually what it said on the application. That's actually what it said in the job description when they said we're hiring this person. It's a manager in training. And I was at that job for 2 weeks before I did anything that even resembled management. No, at that job I learned to pick up pasta, to clean up around the salad bar, to restock the salad bar. I learned how to kind of make a pizza, but not everything there was about making a pizza. I did get to cut a few pizzas. I got to box a lot of pizzas. I got to make a lot of pizza boxes. But in the 2 weeks that I was there, I never even touched a cash register. See, it was 2 weeks. That was my tolerance at that time at 25-ish years old. My tolerance for the nonsense of I'm a manager in training, but I'm not doing manager stuff. I was really frustrated. I felt like, well, if I'm a manager in training, why am I not managing people? Why am I not managing anything else? And the guy who hired me said, it's not real complicated from my perspective. I figure if you can't do every detail of the job, then how will you know how to manage the people who are? If you can't do every detail of the job, how will you know to manage the people who are? How will you know if what they're doing is wrong? I don't know if you've ever worked for a boss that felt like they needed to tell you how to do your job. They want to micromanage you. They want to look over your shoulder at everything you're doing. And you realize if you walked out the door, they couldn't even perform the tasks that they expect of you. They have no idea what you do all day. They might know what your resume says. They might know what your job skills say. They might know what the job description says. But the actual functionality of making it happen, they are clueless. Now, there's some good and some bad in there. The some bad is it's really hard to manage somebody when you don't understand what they do. But leaders aren't managers. Leaders aren't managers. Leaders manage themselves, and they train people who manage themselves. Leaders are influencers. That dichotomy alone shifts a lot of people's mindset. There are a lot of people who believe that as a leader, my job is to manage. Your job is to lead. Your job is to influence. Those are a little bit different. Go back and read a swath of information from John Maxwell versus Peter Drucker, and you're going to see some intertwining ideologies. You're going to see some practices that have to be duplicated in both categories. You're also going to see some general mindsets that are very different between management and leadership. They are not the same thing. But a lot of people who get a job as a manager, assistant manager, they need to grow their leadership skills. But that doesn't mean that you've got to learn to do everybody's job the same way that they do their job. You need to understand what their tasks are. But when I talk about filling a cabinet with the right tools, here's what I really mean. From a leadership standpoint, it's pretty important to know that you have a role to fill as a leader, and you also, within your organizational chart, have other roles that need to be filled. Those other roles should be filled by people who are competent at those roles. Your job is not necessarily, as the leader, to be competent at all of those roles. In fact, That would be a ludicrous gesture to think that a CEO of Pepsi can both bottle the Pepsi, load the Pepsi in the truck, drive the truck, manage the accounting, handle the sales of the account, work on the chemicals that create the Pepsi, rebuild the plant when the plant is struck by a tornado. If he could do all of those jobs, he would be, or she would be, a miraculous individual. But as a leader, their ability should include the ability to identify people who can do those jobs well. When I say fill the tool cabinet with the proper tools, a lot of that has to do with understanding what someone's capacity is, what their competencies are, what their own leadership skills look like, where they've had responsibilities in the past, and then putting them in place. You've got to know that you don't know everything. But you've also got to know when you don't know, you fill the spot with the person who does. It takes a lot of humility and a lot of integrity to say, I don't know, but I think I'm going to find the person who does, by exercising the process of identifying what the actual problem is and looking for someone who's met that problem with a solution in the past. For a lot of people, that starts off with the resume versus job description comparison. What have they done? Where have they been? Who have they served? What have they learned? What kind of education or credentials do they have? That's kind of the best place to start. But I love what John Maxwell says when he says we tend to hire people for what they know and then fire them for who they are. We tend to hire people for what they know, but then we fire them for who they are. What he's really saying in that statement is there are a whole lot of people who have the right resume. They've got the right matchup with the job description. They've got the right titles and the right credentials and the right education, but they're not the right kind of person. They don't have the same shared value system. They don't have the same shared work ethic or integrity or things of that nature. And at that moment, even though they may line up with exactly what the job skill set is, they may not be a good part of your team. They're going to be very difficult to lead and near impossible to manage because they don't have your vision as their vision. They don't see your mission as their primary goal. They may have their own agenda. But the who that they are, maybe they've been very successful in the past, but they're actually a thief. They've been very successful in the past because they've never been caught embezzling. It seems like a rabbit trail, but I want you to do a little bit of research on a guy by the name of Jeffrey Epstein. And somewhere along the way, ask yourself, how did he become a multimillionaire? Because if you look at his job history, his education, and things of that nature, that pathway to his wealth is a little bit indistinguishable. It was a lot more about influence. It was a lot more about who he was and who he connected with than it was the work that he did. So is it the job skills, the resume, and the education that got him where he is? Or is it the relationships that he built? Now, you'll know as a leader that you're going to have people in your life, in your business, in your organization, in competitive organizations that have made their way to the top because of relationships alone. They have climbed the corporate ladder not by successes, not by accomplishments, not by credentials, not by qualifications, but solely by relationships. Because they know XYZ, they always got the promotion. They always got protected. They always got shuffled around. They always got moved in. I'm going to say that 9 times out of 10, that is not the kind of person you want to add to your cabinet of tools. There may be times when, from a political standpoint or a banking standpoint, a business relationship standpoint, you've got to have the right relationship to close the deal. And to have somebody like that on a short-term contract might be necessary. But to have them as a permanent part of your team is always a risk. Because if they know people that you're going to utilize for influence to create a project or complete a project that you're working on, they also know people who have influence probably that you don't have, which means you're now at risk. You're a target in the middle. That's a dangerous place to be as a leader. But finding that person who has the skill set, who has the ability, the integrity, the character, and the alignment with your values to join your team because you know what you want to accomplish and you know what kind of person needs to fill that role. I'll tell you the biggest failure of most, especially small business entrepreneurs and leaders at the entry level, if you will, is that they want to find a person based solely on their resume. They've not taken the time to fill out that job description, to ask the question, what tasks will I need them to perform? I can't tell you how many times I've been hired for a job in the past, and when I'm hired for that job, they see that I'm capable of doing things that were not in the job description, and they modify the job description rather than hiring another person, and I end up doing the work of 3 or 4 or 5 people. If you're a skilled or talented person as a communicator with a logical mind, those things are going to happen to you on a regular basis. Those of you watching this probably could raise your hand and go, it has happened to me multiple times that I ended up doing the job of 3 or 4 people, maybe from downsizing, maybe from a company in the startup mode, maybe from leaders who just hadn't had a clear description of what the tasks at hand would be for this particular role. But if they see you're capable of them, suddenly it's in your job description, because they don't really want to let you go, but they don't really want to spend the money to hire somebody else either. If you're a good leader, you've taken the time to look at all of the tasks that need to be accomplished, the skill sets that would match up with them. You've asked yourself, is it possible that the person who has this skill set would also have that skill set? I think I've told you recently about a book I just finished reading called The 6 Types of Working Genius. It was such a well-written book. I read the entire book in 36 hours. It's a great book. It really also points out, Patrick Lencioni is the author. It points out how we all have our own learning styles and our own communication styles and our own working styles, the way that we do the job that we do. And some of the tasks expected within a certain job description are outside of the comfort zone of the people who actually would perform the rest of that job very well. It's just those 1 or 2 tasks are way too much to ask of the individual who fills that role well. If you have somebody who's really, really good at ironing and folding and handling the laundry, and they love it, and clothes always come out crisp and fresh, and they look great, and they smell great, and everything is good with that, but now you also want that same person to do the lawn work. You may find that your trimming isn't nearly as neat as it would have been, and your clothes are not as fresh either if you have the landscaper do the laundry. That doesn't seem like a hard stretch, but there are a lot of leaders who kind of merge those jobs together and go, well, they're the help that does whatever. And so they just do whatever we need them to do. Well, that's a failure. That would be like asking your security person to also babysit. Well, there are some places where that's going to be necessary, but diaper changes are probably not the job of the person who's been trained to protect your life. I'm just saying. That cabinet level position, that I need you to be in the inner circle of influence. I need you to be making decisions that are going to impact the direction of our organization on a regular basis. That is a very specific skill set. It's a core values skill set. It's an alignment with mission and vision skill set. It's also job detail skill set. What tasks can you perform without me? And what tasks can you perform that I don't even know how to do? I wouldn't even know to tell you to do them, but you know in the scope of what your role is that they have to be done. When I say that a leader's got to fill the cabinet with the right tools, that's what I'm talking about. The person who is aligned, the who that they are, fits your organization well. But they also come to the table with a great skill set that says, I can meet the job description you have, and I know things about the job, about the task, about the accomplishment that you don't even know to tell me to do, but I will get them done anyway. That is a great asset to your tool cabinet. This is not just management. This is leadership at a higher level, and that's what I'm challenging you to. A leader knows how to fill the cabinet with the proper tools, and that begins with the who that they are, not just the tasks that they do. I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.